welcome back. We have an esteemed guest today that I think you're going to really enjoy. She is a constitutional lawyer. She's got a media just outreach that she is all over. She's on OANN. She's on Victory News. She's on CTN. She goes to the River Church, which is a big deal for me, and so many more things that she's doing. You can find out information by going to KrisAnneHall.com. And I want to welcome KrisAnne Hall. KrisAnne, welcome.
Thank you so much. It is my pleasure to be here.
Well, it's an honor to have you on.
Out there.
Yes, thank you. And if you don't know KrisAnne, I got to tell you, this woman is taking a stand, and she's doing it in such a way that she's making a massive impact. And so I was so honored that she accepted our invite to come on the broadcast today. KrisAnne, you've been out there sharing the truth, and I want to get into a couple of subjects I think are very important from a legal standpoint, because I think you could shed some light on these areas. You know, I go around the country right now. A lot of people are very concerned about what's happening with President Trump. He's got several cases against him right now. Is this something that we need to be worried about? I mean, is President Trump going to be put in jail, in your opinion?
I don't mean to laugh. I really don't believe he will. No, because the real purpose of all of this judicial attack on Donald Trump is just merely election interference.
Yeah,
it really is. I've been practicing law for over 2 decades, and I have been involved in politics for over 15 years now, and I have been watching all of this happen fold right in front of us, and I know what it looks like when someone is engaging in prosecutorial, retaliatorial conduct, and that's really what's happening to Donald Trump. Because I'll tell you, just give you a little insight. The judge in this whole Stormy Daniels thing was never concerned about being overturned on appeal. Judges are neurotic about being overturned on appeal. Judges will sometimes work too hard to not be overturned on appeal. So the fact that this judge's conduct was so far outside the norm, I knew almost from the beginning that he didn't care if he was overturned, because that was having a lasting result was not on his agenda. Right. His agenda was between now and November. Can we call Donald Trump a convicted felon? What kind of bylines? What kind of talking points can we push out in the media? All of these things being judicially pushed from the bench would be just one of them would have this case immediately overturned in appeal. And he just racked up event after event after event until I was just like, this guy doesn't care. He's not even, he doesn't even care about being overturned.
Yeah, I mean, he's giving the jury advice that sounded to me, and I don't have the legal understanding that you did, but sounded like it wasn't appropriate. Am I correct in saying that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and to be honest with you, the technical violations were even more egregious than the jury instructions. I think by the time he got to the jury instructions and jury deliberation, he was like, forget it. We're so far down this path now. I could practically tell them, all right, it's my opinion he's guilty. You need to go find him guilty, and let's and come back with a guilty verdict. Right. And he the case wouldn't have been any more jeopardized than what he'd already done over the last few days.
Yes. So what is the process now that President Trump has to go through? I mean, because it's a kangaroo court, in my opinion, but it's still, it's apparently he's got these counts against him. What happens next?
Well, there will be appealed, right? So the appeal is not a thing; it's a process. And because these are state crimes, they will be appealed through the state of New York before they get to a federal appeals level. Because not every criminal case can be appealed to the federal level, but this one can, because of the misconduct that happened during the trial was actually a very real and tangible violation of his civil rights.
Yeah.
So because we have a violation of Trump's civil rights through the conduct of this judicial system, that will be appealable all the way to the Supreme Court. So when I tell people that appeal is not a thing, it's a process, appeal is never done until one of two things happens. Number one, the Supreme Court denies certiorari, which means they say we're not going to take this case, or 5-4 opinion from the court. So there's only two ways this ends, one of those two ways. And then
Right.
and before that end, it's really sort of in flux, which is another reason why that when you file for an appeal in a criminal case, you also file for a stay, delay on the sentencing or the imposition of sentencing. So either Donald Trump won't be sentenced until the appeal is finished, or if the judge feels really cheeky, then he'll just go ahead and sentence, but the sentence will not be imposed until the appeal is finished.
Wow. So what's going to happen? There's this sentencing that's coming up. Is there a possibility they could attempt to put him in jail that day, or what do you think is going to happen that day?
Well, we're so far outside the norm that anything is possible at this point. And you have to realize that I personally believe there's multiple goals that this judge, who's actually working for the system and not for judicial justice, right? It's quite obvious that he is on the side of election disruption. He is against whatever is happening with Donald Trump's movement towards presidency. So you can call him a liberal, you can call him a leftist, you can call him a globalist, you can label whatever labels you want on it, but he's really a disruptor and a provocateur of our Republican process. So what he does at sentencing, I think, is a bit unpredictable at this point, because the end goal, again, is disruption in November. And what really we're waiting to see is how far they're willing to go to disrupt November.
Yeah, and it seems like every time that's right. Every time they do this, it seems like President Trump goes up in the polls. He's got more support. It seems like they're shooting themselves in their foot, if you ask me.
Yeah, and that's true. I think there's one thing about the enemy, if you even take this from a spiritual perspective, is the enemy always underestimates what happens. They get arrogant and they think that they're the smartest and they're omnipotent and they're omniscient. Right. And that's a trait that only belongs to God. So the enemy has that arrogance because the enemy is a liar and the enemy is a child of the father of lies. So those traits are really comparable there. The arrogance, the vanity, all of these haughty traits make you unable to really perceive reality and its subsequent results or possible results. So I think that's really what's happening here. The thing that concerns me most is how far are they willing to go to disrupt November, because it is quite possible, because you have to understand there is an aspect of the far left that is heavily influenced by a political movement that's been around for centuries, and we call them the revolutionary anarchists, right? The violent revolutionaries. They're behind a lot of revolutions and a lot of disruptions and a lot of destabilization. So much so that, not to jump off track, but so much so that our CIA uses them quite often in foreign realms to destabilize governments in the foreign fields. So if these people are really, really heavily yoked with this violent revolutionary groups, then they may be willing to try to arrest Donald Trump in a hope to push for a violent eruption from the conservative side. Because remember, on our side, we are conservative and we have a tendency to be more long-suffering, and we have a tendency to trust more in the outcome that good will prevail, knowing that we have to be vessels to push for that. So we're not ones that go to violence like the other side does.
That's right.
So I think if they're really heavily yoked with that group, then they're going to be willing to try to push a segment of the conservative crowd to that more violent result. And I can't say more emphatically that we must resist that.
Yes.
We must resist that. And
That's
it's
right.
one of the most wonderful things that our founders gave us when they gave us a constitutional republic instead of a kingdom. They gave us very powerful tools in ways of peaceful noncompliance.
Yes.
That we can disrupt the disruptors, powerfully making change through, as Martin Luther King, the peaceful noncompliance,
That's right.
the peaceful protests. And that's really our biggest weapon, because they want us to be violent. So then the presidential administration can assume more power over the people. The presidential administration can declare martial war. The presidential and the leftists can point and say, look, we knew you were violent. You were always violent.
That's right.
You're just being violent now. And so it's a trap that the enemy is trying, a snare the enemy is trying to set us up for. And we just have to be patient, and we have to be resolved, and we have to be workers to the good. And I think what you said earlier was the most hopeful thing is every time they do this, Trump gets more powerful. He gets more votes. And we just need to do things the right way.
That's right. They got movies like Civil War that's out right now. It's almost like they're predictably programming what they would like to see happen.
Always.
It's crazy. I actually come from Hollywood. I was a Hollywood actor for many years. So,
I did not know that about you. That's very cool.
the Lord showed me when I was there. That's actually how I came to get more involved with government, because I saw there was a plumb line from Hollywood to government. I started looking up Operation Mockingbird and the Church Commission, and, realized that a lot of that's happening today. And, if you pay attention, you could kind of see the direction that they're kind of propagandizing us to go, what they at least like to see. So to your point, we can't respond that way. It's easier said than done, though, when you're trying to throw the Republican nominee, into jail. A lot of people are like, well, what are we, how long are we going to sit here? So
well, the good news is he can run for office from jail.
That's right. That's right.
I'm seriously, he can win election from jail.
Yes.
And if that's the case, then let him do it. I mean, seriously, how much more humiliating would that be?
That's right.
To this whole regime if we didn't give in to their snare and we pushed Donald Trump to win in jail?
Yep.
I mean, the whole thing there would be nothing more indicative of the destruction of the judicial system, and even the yoking of the media and politics and the judiciary than that very thing. And I think one of the other things that we have trouble with, Todd, is people don't really know what to do, right?
That's exactly right.
And we've made 2 award-winning documentaries on what to do, not based on, KrisAnne Hall's opinion or my husband JC's opinion or anybody's opinion, but based on how our founders created our constitutional republic, what they actually said. Our power and right to resistance exists in peaceful noncompliance. And so those 2 films, and if you don't mind, you can find them at noncompliantmovie.com, teaches you all about your power, the power of your governor, and the power of your sheriff.
That's right. These movies are so incredible. I got to watch both of them, and they talk about even how you can get the sheriffs involved, and things that other people wouldn't know. And so you're giving like a roadmap, because this is the biggest question I get is, what can I do? People are frustrated. They're trying to figure out what they can do. We've seen more parents going to school board meetings. Thank God. We've been seeing people getting involved in the community. Many people are running for office. I know the River has the School of Government. There's a lot of people getting involved, and this is so critical. But what, when people ask you that, and they see these movies, what are they going to be empowered to know? What are they going to know about?
Tom, what's really amazing is I have been traveling the country teaching American history, the Constitution, for 15 years now. For 7 of those years, I averaged 260 classes in over 22 states every single year for 2 years, because I teach middle school, high school, college. I've taught the legislators of 11 states in session. I teach county commissioners, business groups, civics groups. And I have taught representatives of sheriff's departments from all 50 states. As a matter of fact, we're going to be doing some sheriff training this Friday here in Florida.
Wow. Come on.
And that is the most asked question I get. Okay, KrisAnne, we know something's wrong. We feel it in our gut. Maybe we know something specific, but what do we do now?
Yep.
And my whole mission, the whole mission of my family for 15 years has been answering that question. So we have non-compliant movie, the 2 movies there. We also have a total online educational program at libertyfirstsociety.com that will show you step by step a walkthrough of the Constitution, of what it says, not just simply reading the Constitution, but an explanation of what the founders meant when they wrote it,
right,
and how that empowers us. We are not a government like a kingdom, which is power from the king down to the people. We are a constitutional republic, not a democratic republic.
That's
not
right.
a constitutional democracy. We are a constitutional republic. And in that institution, Todd, our founders put into our hands the most powerful tools to control government, any government that has ever been created. But we've been deceived. Our government education system, since its design and inception, has been designed to make citizens who are docile and compliant to government from day one. And we have been trained into that ignorance, that compliance, that docility since we entered into our government education system. It's why homeschool kids are completely different. It's why some private school kids are completely different. And the reason is this. Samuel Adams said this: "No people will tamely surrender their liberty, nor be easily subdued, when knowledge is diffused and virtue is preserved." He said, on the contrary, when the people, not the president, not when the Congress, but when the people become universally ignorant and debauched in their manners,
That's right.
they will sink underneath their own weight without the aid of foreign invaders. That's why Benjamin Franklin said a republic if you can keep it.
That's right.
He never put it on the hands of the court. He never put it on the shoulders of the president or Congress. He said it's a republic if you can keep it.
Wow. Yeah, and they want to get rid of our Constitution. These evil people that you referenced earlier, whoever we want to call them, a cabal or whoever they are, they don't like the fact that we have the Constitution. They want to take away our religious liberties, our freedoms. And what was so interesting to me is during the COVID era, that period of time, how few lawyers were willing to really go up against these local tyrants. You were out there, several others were, but not too many. And what was your experience in that time?
Well, you have to understand, when I'm talking about the government school system, I'm not talking just K through 12. I'm talking all the way through secondary and postgraduate. Most attorneys, most law schools, and I'm trying to be generous by saying most and not all, don't teach the Constitution anymore.
Wow.
What they teach is constitutional law, which teaches that judges and lawyers know more about the Constitution than the men who wrote it, and that the Constitution really isn't a standard for government. It's a wishy-washy, mutable, wax-filled, living, breathing thing that's subject to the interpretation of people who have been taught ignorance about the Constitution.
Wow.
So that's why you don't see a lot of lawyers standing up, because understanding constitutional law is a very, very specialized skill. It's sort of like the neurosurgery of the legal practice, right?
Yep.
And even within that constitutional law practice, there's an even smaller segment of attorneys that actually understand what the Constitution is, what it means, and how it's supposed to be applied.
Yes.
And I'll if I can just be totally honest,
Please.
I didn't volunteer for this job. I really didn't. I was a prosecutor here in the state of Florida. It's the only job I ever wanted to do as a lawyer. I loved my job. I loved everything that I did about it. But I started really seeing how our Constitution was being adulterated through ignorance. And I began to teach on my own time about what the founders said, about our American history, the battles that they fought, and the gifts of our Constitution that they gave us for the defense of God's gift of liberty to us.
Yes.
And not to belabor the story, but I was actually fired by the state of Florida for teaching the Constitution on my own time.
This is Florida we're talking about. Wow.
Yeah. It's fired by the state of by an elected official in the state of Florida. My boss was a state attorney elected to office here in the state of Florida. Fired me because he didn't like how I was teaching the Constitution, and he didn't like who I was teaching it to. He told me that to teach that the Constitution demands limited government was an ethics violation for me because I worked for government, that I somehow had to teach that government was unlimited and could do whatever they want simply because I work for government. And he told me that I could only teach people that he approved of. So, my husband and I prayed about it. It was a very difficult decision. It was a very difficult time in our lives to make that decision. And my husband just said to me, he was pastoring a church at the time, and he said to me, we either believe what we preach or we don't.
Right.
We either believe what you teach or we don't. Yeah. And this is the time where we have to put our faith to work and take a stand.
Yes.
So I told my boss, you did not give me my freedom of speech. You did not give me my rights. Those come from God, and I'm not trading them for your paycheck. And I'm not going to shut up. So he told me I had to quit. And I said, nope, I'm not quitting. You're going to have to fire me. And that's what he did.
Wow. So fired for standing for the Constitution, fired for standing for truth. A lot of what you're saying, I'm thinking about a lot of the body of Christ and a lot of pastors that also have been taught in a lot of seminaries similar things. It's kind of, different, but similar. I also think about the medical industry, same thing. Doctors, you got naturopath doctors, you got doctors that are standing for truth. And then you got doctors that are totally institutionalized with the big pharma, so it seems like this infiltration has happened in many different sectors, and God is sending up and raising up people like yourself and your husband. Thank God for you, who are anointed, and you're in the marketplace, but you're also in the ministry. I mean, you're in the ministry, and you're informing people for such a time as this. I see you as like an Esther, you're rising up in this hour and standing for righteousness. Thank you. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for making these films. Thank you for the sacrifices that you and your husband have made. We honor those sacrifices. We honor you, and I just want to thank you, because seriously, I talk to a lot of people, but there's not a lot of people like you that are genuine, sincere, and really believe and stand in what you believe in. And so it's making a huge impact. And that's why I think the Lord is continuing to expand your territory. For those that are watching, and we're going to put the links of the films in the description. I'd love for you to go and see both these films and go to KrisAnne's website. We're also going to put that in the description. We only have a few more minutes left here, KrisAnne, but are you hopeful with regard to the direction of the country? Are we going to have an election? Do you think they're going to pull this War Powers Act and try to get us into a war? I'm just curious what you think about these things.
Well, I could just say there's never been a president that hasn't used the War Powers Act since its adoption, so that wouldn't be unusual. Am I hopeful? I've never been more hopeful for America than I am now. I can't tell you what's going to happen in November. I don't think anybody can tell you what's going to happen in November. People don't even know what's going to happen in October or September or August, much less November. But what I can tell you is this: human nature can be relied on. Thomas Jefferson said that people will suffer evil as long as evil is sufferable. And I am more encouraged now than ever, because people are starting to wake up to the evil they've been suffering now for some time. And Thomas Jefferson also wrote that after a long train of abuses and usurpations, then people will come to the conclusion that this is no longer sufferable and liberty is worth taking a stand for. That's right. And that's the direction we're coming in. The other reason I'm hopeful now more than ever is because I realize that liberty is not a gift of the Constitution. Liberty is not a gift of government. Liberty is a gift from God. It is in us. It is inherent in us. It is intertwining and holding our DNA together. And liberty, these gifts from God, cannot be infringed upon forever until that spirit stands up in the people of America. It's our DNA, right? That and we just simply say, sorry, we're not going to tolerate this any longer. We're not going to put up with this any longer. So you get in line, or we're going to have problems. And we have the solutions of peaceful noncompliance to really, really rope this government back together. And here's the thing. A lot of people are waiting. How do we know we have enough people to make a change? Well, Harvard did centuries of history study and found out with peaceful noncompliance, you only need 3% of a population to make a lasting change. And 3% of a population engaged in peaceful noncompliance has never, throughout the history of time, has never failed to make a lasting change. So violent revolutions pop up. You win some, you lose some. They'll work for a little while, then they fail. But peaceful noncompliance at a 3% capacity has never failed and has always made a lasting change.
Wow, 3%. That's not even a tithe. That's like, just 3%.
Right.
Can make that big of a difference. That's what we need to do. And I know that God is.
It's a threefold cord, remember?
Come on. That's right. And the Lord is raising up a standard in this hour. And I know many of you that are watching, you have that passion. KrisAnne, if people want to find your teachings and, the stuff that you're putting out there, where can they go to find your information?
Our main teaching site is libertyfirstsociety.com. You can also go to noncompliantmovie.com. That's where our movies are. And my main hub is my name, KrisAnneHall.com, KrisAnnehall.com.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you and JC so much and everything that you're doing. And people can give to you as well on those sites if they want to give?
Yeah, absolutely. We also have a nonprofit law firm. We're a nonprofit civil rights law firm, kind of like the ACLU, but on the good guy side.
Come on.
And that's libertyfirstsociety.com. So anybody out there, we are working hard, right? Really, really hard. Contact us and ask for our 2023 yearly update. Thousands of people with vaccine exemption successful. We have a 98% success rate for that, even with the military. And we help churches stay open. We help businesses stay open. And we are still helping people all over the country do things like that. And donations to libertyfirst.legal are very, very important, and they are also tax deductible. And if I could throw one more website out there, it's not bad enough. ConnectHomeschool.com. ConnectHomeschool.com. We are organizing homeschool helps for people that not only involve curriculum recommendations, but also beginning a history curriculum that you can trust because it's based on our works.
Wow. So important. I have a daughter and we're in the process of that right now. And I'll just tell you how big of a deal that is, especially when you're looking for the, curriculum that aligns with our Christian values and our faith. So super important. We're going to put all those links below, and please go out and support KrisAnne. She is amazing. She's standing for our country, our Constitution, our religious liberty, and so much more. And keep her and her husband in prayer. And KrisAnne, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I'm blessed.
Hey friends, thank you so much for tuning in to today's broadcast. This show is fully listener supported, which means we can't do this without your help. If you have a heart to help us, please go to toddcoconato.com/give. That's toddcoconato.com/give and become a monthly partner. We so appreciate you. Thank you, and God bless you.